Hey folks, welcome back to the BookFunnel Blurb Review. My name is Jack. I am our lead author support specialist here at BookFunnel, and I want to take you through today's blurb review of Winter Has Fallen, All Civilizations Must End by Amanda McClare. Before we dive in though, let's review what makes a good blurb. What is it we're looking to do when we are crafting our blurb? Well, a few things. Number one, we don't want it to be too long. We want to keep it brief. 100 words is ideal. We want to avoid info dumping. That's where we provide too much information about the characters and the world, and too many names, really, is usually what it is. We do want to avoid cliche where we can, although every now and then some cliches can work if you execute them properly. And of course, we want to communicate genre conventions. We want the reader to understand what they're expecting from the blurb, what they can expect in the book. And of course, we want to hook the reader. That hook is essential to get them to then pick up the book. So let's dive in here. So starting off strong, the United States has splintered. This is communicating a number of things. First of all, it is a good hook. The United States has splintered is telling me right off the bat about some of the conflict involved in this story. And that's going to pique my interest if this is a genre that I am interested in already. It's also, like I said, introducing the conflict, most likely. I haven't read the book, of course, so I'm assuming, and this is one note I should make, is that you always want to make sure that whatever you include in your blurb actually is what is in the book. They should match each other. I'm sure that's the case here, but it is one thing that I do want to point out, right? That your blurb should match the content of your book. This is also communicating genre conventions here, most likely, based on what we're looking at. There's probably this, we're dealing with some sort of dystopian, perhaps post-apocalyptic genre. And so we're communicating that through this initial sentence. Collapsing under the weight of politics, natural disasters, and invasion, what remains is a nation of refugees fleeing the ensuing violence, disease, and starvation. So yes, very dystopian here. This does a very good job of setting the scene, maybe for kind of just the environment, not so much the conflict yet, but I would say this is communicating the genre to me very strongly and in an effective way. Jamie, we're introduced here to presumably the main character, is determined to survive. Her hard-won skills could give her that necessary edge. Despite deadly delays and betrayals, she leads a small band through the dangerous wilderness of a fallen nation, hunting the promised haven which awaits. So we're introduced to the main character and not a whole lot else, and that's actually good. There's no info dumping going on here. We're not being forced to read about multiple characters and that sort of thing. We're just being given the information that we need. There's maybe some phrasing here that could use some extra attention, right? Jamie is determined to survive. This is short and sweet and is fine. Her hard-won skills could give her that necessary edge to survive, is what I think this is implying. Maybe there's some wording here that could be adjusted, but I might also be being just a little nitpicky. Now, at the end, we have this to finish it off. If only she and the little herd of horses left in her charge can reach it. That is, the promised haven which awaits. If only the deadly winter chill doesn't claim her first. If only her cold heart doesn't crack like ice. So, first of all, this sentence here, the phrasing of it is a little clunky to me. This, especially the beginning, if only she and the little herd of horses, that's not something that I'm immediately reading correctly. I stumble over the first couple of times I looked at it. So I recommend changing the wording of this. You're using this if only phrase and repeating that 3 times, and that can be an effective technique. And here you're trying to also introduce the conflict. So you're trying to stuff a few things into this sentence, and I think it's adding a little bit too much. That sentence is having to do a little too much work. So I think that can be reworded. The one thing that is missing until maybe the end, right? Obviously, the conflict here seems to be, if I'm not mistaken, with the environment. So there might not necessarily be a conflict with a personified antagonist. We might be dealing with the environment itself, and that can be sometimes hard to communicate. And so if that's what you've done here and that's accurate to the book, then that's good. If only the deadly winter chill doesn't claim her first, you're setting up the environment as the antagonist when you make a statement like this. And that's fine as long as that is in fact the case, that is the antagonist, that the antagonist is the environment, in this case the winter chill. And then this last phrase I actually like the best: if only her cold heart doesn't crack like ice. We're hinting at internal conflict here. So this is telling me that there's some other things going on throughout Jamie's adventure and her struggle to survive in this environment. So I think there's a little bit of wording here that could be tweaked. I think it's doing most of its job, though, which is just communicating genre conventions. It's not too long. There's no info dumping. We're avoiding cliches. There's just maybe a few spots here or there where a little bit of change in wording could make it more effective. Also, I think that this final paragraph here, really it's not a paragraph, it's 3 lines, would be better executed if there was a carriage return between each of these so that they were spaced out just like these other paragraphs were. I think that makes it read a little bit easier and formatted in that way. A little bit more staccato, if you will, is what's coming to mind. It's creating some tempo for how the reader actually reads those words. And so I think that would also help. But overall, I think it does its job well. This is by no means a bad blurb. This is doing the majority of its job. I do think there is room for improvement, though. So that's it for today, folks. We'll see you all in the next one.
Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos from BookFunnel, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.